Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Investing with the Difference. And we are back with another episode of BP Focus series. And today we have on the show Greymass team. So I think a lot of you are very, very familiar with Greymass because of the wallet. And almost everybody, I think we have been recommending since the start of mainnet to use Greymass wallet. They were the first one to come out. Interestingly, it's still called DEOS Voter. So we are going to talk to the team on the history of that, because I think most of us started that using that for the voting. And I think they have been a very, very important block producer for some time. And as I see on their website, so they have quite a few Steam projects. We are going to learn about that. I think the EOS world maybe doesn't know a lot about that. And we have Aaron and Scott on the call. And recently, we have a very big project. I think they started with a very, very important project for EOS ecosystem. That was EOS Mechanics. And as you can see, Team Greymass was behind that, along with Aloha EOS and EOS Titan. So without wasting any further time, let me bring in Aaron and Scott. Hi, guys. Welcome to the show.
Hey there.
Hello.
So first of all, I would like to congratulate you on all the work you have been doing, and you have become one of the most important ecosystem player for EOS. So how do you feel after almost 100 days now of a mainnet launch?
Tired.
Now we can imagine. I think you have been very, very active. So let me stop sharing the screen so that we can have kind of interview format. So go ahead. So I think maybe you can introduce yourself. I definitely talked about the wallet. I talked about the mechanics. I think I can imagine, as you said, you are tired because of the lot of work you have been doing, because it is not an easy job, because you are almost helping, I don't know, means you may have better statistics, but a lot of people are using your wallets to keep their tokens secure, which is not a small responsibility. And of course, you are contributing a lot on the performance of EOS network. Like this mechanics project was very important. I think we saw one of the big improvement, like Start EOS is an example I think everybody's talking about. They started at the worst, and now they are the best, doing really well in the metrics of CPU latencies. So what do you think, like beyond this, did I miss something? I'm sure you guys are very busy doing a lot of other cool stuff.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few things that are on our plate, and some of it isn't too public sometimes. So we can talk about the API node infrastructure that we're supporting right now, which is absolutely crazy massive. We're going to do a blog post on that. And there's other things on behind the scenes, like working on the proposal system with other VPs and other stuff like that, where we're just kind of involved in the governance aspect of things. But that doesn't always have a public face to it too.
No, that makes sense. I think, yeah, we do see you a lot in the referendum system group, giving your opinions. I think, but it's, as you said, it's not very visible. That is still happening within a working group. So what's your opinion right now on the state, like based on your Greymass wallet? First of all, everybody wants to hear the story of this Greymass wallet itself. How this came about? I think you came from nowhere and became the choice for using the wallet and setting it up as soon as the mainnet was launched.
Well, the wallet came out of necessity, I'd have to say. We've been involved in blockchain for quite a while, and we had been paying attention to EOS beforehand, but just were tied up in a number of other things. And as soon as we started talking between Scott and I about potentially getting involved in EOS together, because it's a very different block producer scene. Most of the other DPoS blockchains are all individuals. Like I am a producer and Scott is a producer, and so are just other people around the world. But EOS is a little different in that it is organizations of people. So to pull this back, when we first started getting involved, we looked at kind of what the ecosystem needed and what it didn't have. And the one thing that was really needed was for people to be able to immediately use their accounts and get involved in governance. Like we needed that 15% stake to activate the chain, prove that it was mainnet, and then we needed it for block producers to be able to be elected and continue this cycle, this never-ending election that goes on. So we decided to focus on the wallet first. And here we are today with still a really poorly named application because it was born out of necessity. We are in the process of rebranding it, which we're slowly making progress on, and hope to be able to release that fairly soon. It'll have a much better name, presence, website, branding, new user experience, things like that. And we're going to try to establish that as just, one of the applications that's available for users to choose as they're participating in the EOS ecosystem.
No, that's great. I think you said it right, that it was a necessity at that time. I think people were struggling to figure out how do they even use any interface, because there were a lot of web-based interfaces. Nobody was sure to whether they should enter their private keys at any place. And Scatter, even though it's one of the most important part of the ecosystem, it was very difficult for some of them to identify. And I think what you guys brought in with Greymass, I think it was a very, very easy interface, kept on growing in features. So of course, I'm sure, I think people can always complain about where it can be simpler. But as you said, so EOS Voter, so how did it, were you always planning to be, for it to be a wallet, or it was just you started with Voter and then kept on expanding? Was it just okay?
I think we had plans to build this as a wallet, but I don't think that it's what we wanted to necessarily be known for and focused on. Like I was saying, we did it because the community needed it, and it's not necessarily because it's something that we're going to be 100% focused on. Yeah. So it is expanding. Before, my personal experience in Steam before this was that I built the wallet that's similar to this EOS Voter application that most Steam users who have a wallet that's not on the website end up using. So that's where the experience and kind of the knowledge that we needed to build this came from. And hopefully it'll continue to evolve. I mean, we've had some great discussions and great ideas on ways to integrate this with the new potential that EOS unlocks. We're still trying to find a way to keep it privacy-centric, so that way it's your computer is kind of your castle and it's safe and secure. And really start diving deeper into exploring the ways that people can use these smart contracts that are being built.
No, that's great. I think, so I really like the way you said it can really interface with a lot more features. And we do see some additional features. Let me see if I can share. So you talk about some of these ideas around smart contract interaction. So it's not very easy for people to understand. Let me see if I can share it. So I think some of these things which people always look at is these tools. I think you are adding continuously the features. And of course,
on the front page, there's a smart contract. If you go back to the voting page and you see the little purple buttons, that's the producer JSON smart contract that I created. And what that is a smart contract that allows a producer to sign their information onto the blockchain. So once they've done that, they get that little purple bubble, and you can see their information, all about them, but it doesn't have to make any external requests. It's all from and on the blockchain.
Oh no, that's great. So I think this is something I'm learning new. So what's the meaning of these other buttons which are not purple? What does that mean? They don't have JSON files loaded, or?
Yeah, that means that they haven't put their information onto the blockchain. Most actually have by now, but there's still a few stragglers, I guess.
All right. No, this is interesting. And I'm really surprised that out of top 7, 4 have not put anything on the, so that's something which needs to be discussed, but I think it's great. I think we are learning new things. I'm sure this little tool which you use every day, there are a lot of things which people don't understand. So thanks for highlighting that. So I think we were talking about this, the other tab, which is the tools. And we see a lot of things happening now. So you have these proposals, which is very interesting. I'm waiting for it when it will have something shows up. I don't think I've checked it. So do you think that people will be able to understand these things? Because right now, I think these are very complicated interactions. I think even when I talk to a few people, because I have personally helped a lot of people set up Greymass Wallet. because of the reason, like I'm very passionate about people moving their tokens from exchange to owning themselves. So the maximum I was able to convince people is to use this, of course, the airdrop custom tokens, because it's very easy. You just click, and this is something which you made it, simplified it greatly ever since you launched this feature. Because earlier we had to add manually, and then now you can just select them. And of course, the multiple wallet features is amazing, because I think this is something which you need when you are really using multiple keys and multiple accounts. And I think the permissions, of course, I have not unlocked the wallet yet, but changing the permissions and options. So what do you think? Like, I do see some others like smart contract, which looks pretty advanced, where you can actually maybe interact with smart contracts. So what do you think about these features? Will they get at one day? Do you see people start like an average token holder? Will they be able to understand these things and really start using them? Let me just unlock it.
Sure.
So
Go for it.
Okay. One of the cool things is that we are actually developing into the direction of easy to use. So like you mentioned with the custom tokens, when you first had custom tokens and they were first coming out, it was really hard to understand what was going on. You had to know the contract name, and you had to know like the symbol, and then you have to manually plug all that information in. And as you can see now, when you go there, it's just you tick the boxes that you want. And the way that we developed that was, again, with the smart contract. So the custom tokens is actually a smart contract interaction. So any token creator can publish their specific token into this default list. So all they have to do is run a command on their node, and it just publishes an information that says, this is my token, here's the symbol. And then now every user of the EOS Voter app they can just tick that button. And it's all automatic, and it just all is on the blockchain.
No, that makes sense. So, so what kind of smart contracts do you see in near future where people will be interacting with? Like tokens, yeah, is of course a very basic use case. Do you see like, can you give us some examples for viewers to understand what can we see in future? Where will there be any other smart contracts which we can see very easy to interact with through a wallet?
I think that the first one that people are going to really start seeing, and hopefully soon, is going to be the referendum system, which is what the proposals on the left is kind of the initial startings of. This is going to be the system where every stakeholder is allowed to vote on the issues of the day. Whether we are approving a hard fork, or whether we are implementing a feature, or whether we're changing something, those kind of interactions are going to flow through this referendum smart contract. And the smart contract will have interfaces like this one that will allow everyone to participate in the governance, just like they're participating in block producer voting. That's kind of one example of how we're going to start seeing these smart contracts really start permeating both the wallets and the websites. Right now, it's, as we're seeing, not all that complete.
Yeah, I was just trying to click it and see what happens. So sorry for that, but I think it looks pretty easy if it is going to be like this interface. I'm assuming this is just a test, but you can actually read the proposal and say yes or no. Wallet. So if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yep, basically. And
so that is a really very impressive feature.
To go to your ease of use comment prior to this, that, like Scott said, it's something we're actively working on. And I think that the goal is to really break the application into multiple pieces. Right now, we're kind of sticking everything in tools because we're building the foundation to allow these actions to be created. And then we're going to try to wrap it up in a nice interface to where, if you want to use this program as a wallet, then you won't have to deal with all the other advanced features. Or if you want to use it to participate in governance and maybe not use it as your wallet, you could kind of tailor the experience to that purpose. So we're going to be taking this laundry list of things, and that's going to just keep growing, and we're going to break it out into easier to use components that will hopefully make it a lot easier to use.
No, makes sense. So I think that's great to hear. And I think already we are seeing every day it's getting easier and easier to interact with the chain with these tools. And we really appreciate all the work you're doing. So is there anything else you would like to highlight which people don't really understand or maybe underutilize a feature which is available in the wallet? while we are at it?
There's always a lot of questions, but I don't know if one of them jumps out more than anything else.
Now, so for example, one thing which I keep highlighting to people is I think a lot of people do not understand the permissions. Of course, I'm not going to click it to expose my keys, but after I unlocked it. But I think the permissions thing, which I try to explain to people. And of course, I think there is a key generator right here. A lot of people struggle. How do you create a new key pair and so on? And earlier we used to have this websites to go to. But I think now it's pretty good, and I think it's a very, very impressive tool. So thanks a lot once again. So let me stop sharing it because we can cover some other items. So what are the other things you think are on your mind right now? Like what you think, EOS, how it is progressing? It's only 100 days. I think we have seen lots and lots of work. People are, of course, impatient. So what is your take on the state of EOS or the ecosystem and how it is growing?
It's pretty impressive how it's growing. I've been deep into quite a few different blockchain projects, and the rate at which we're seeing fairly high quality applications being deployed it's impressive. I don't know that I've personally seen this rate of growth before. Between having a half a dozen to a dozen wallet applications. I don't know, I haven't used them all, but just the rate at which they're coming out and the competition that's also spurring innovation, and people are continually just trying to one-up each other to really improve the EOS ecosystem. And the stakeholders are the ones benefiting from all of this. It's been pretty incredible.
No, I think we are all appreciating how it's going. So Scott, do you have any, I think you wanted to say something in this direction.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. It's not just the wallets too. It's like a couple of weeks ago, we had the very first Dice app that people started playing and using. And now today there's like 5 or 6 or 7 different choices that you can, and they're all the similar kind of Dice app, but it's like, wow, as soon as someone gets that idea, others are like, wow, can I make this better? Or can I provide a better user experience to this? And then they've been iterating on it. And now there's so much traffic going out to just Dice. And that's like a super simple thing, but it was the first one to come out. And now people are just like, wow, this is so cool because it's so fast.
No, that's right. I think now I keep talking about how for the first time I started interacting with chain was, of course, using Greymass wallet when I updated and started sending tokens. And for example, I bought some more at Binance and I sent it. And it was just an impressive thing, like it shows up immediately. And I think that's the games, of course, will feel it, all the things which we are seeing every day. And I keep saying that the number of transactions I make every day, they are maybe my lifetime transaction on blockchain on any other previous Bitcoin or Ethereum transactions. So I think that is what is impressive about EOS. And we are only expanding from here. We are only making more and more transactions. As we play more games, we send more tokens and this exchanges and so on.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into what we have been focusing a lot on recently, and that's our API infrastructure, because a lot of these games, apps, wallets, explorers that you see, they're all using our APIs right now. We're serving out hundreds of millions of API requests a day.
So how did it happen? Like just because you're famous and from the wallet, do they start ending up using your APIs, or is it something you are publishing easy to use? So what's the difference here? So how do you spread the load, and how important it is? So maybe you touched upon a very important point. So how important it is for block producers to provide this API nodes and to enable these dApps, and how can it be further improved in performance?
We haven't.
I just want to preface this, and then Aaron, you can go. But to give an understanding of what makes a dApp, what makes the D in the dApp instead of just an app, is that it doesn't matter where you are, you can use that app. And part of the necessity for that is to have an API node that's irrelevant of your specific application that anyone can use. And that's hugely important to call yourself a dApp. It has to be able to work no matter what. It can't just work with your own infrastructure. So if you have this game that requires your server to run it, it's not a dApp, it's just an app. So just wanted to make that distinction clear because I know Aaron's going to jump off on that and start explaining more. So go ahead.
Right. We didn't. The only place we ever really promoted our API was, when you're connecting to using our wallet. When people were deciding to choose, we put ourselves on the top just because, we were the first ones to build this thing and say, hey, use our API. And other wallets did the same with theirs. Yeah. But without promotion, I think it has been developers kind of looking for lists of who's running these APIs and then just testing them. And we've been told by multiple groups that they're like, your API is just lightning fast. I'm going to use yours. And that has slowly kind of spread. And now there are dozens of projects running on our APIs. So it's been this really grassroots developer thing that's gone on. And most of the community and probably most of the block producers don't even know that this is happening. But it's one of the things that, like Scott said, we're writing a blog post about it right now, just because with as much time as we're investing into improving this, making it faster, and expanding, it's an interesting subject. And when it might even be an interesting soundbite when we're talking about promoting EOS outside of EOS. When we're talking about, API nodes serving 250 million requests a day, there's just these huge numbers with these huge numbers of transactions going on inside of them. That's just, it brings a whole new perspective to what's happening in EOS right now. It's not only that, like we hit thousands of transactions a second, but it's that there are tens of thousands of users making hundreds of millions of API requests.
No, that's very impressive. So just as a second part of the question, so how do you deal with it? Like, first of all, does it create additional load for because people started using your APIs more and more? How does it impact you as a block producer? And how do you deal with this situation?
I was just making sure Scott wasn't going to jump in. Our production infrastructure is separated from our API infrastructure. So there's no direct correlation or impact on our ability to produce blocks or to run this API network. We have some prior experience running these kinds of API nodes for other various blockchains, with like Steam being a great example. There's hundreds of Steam apps out there that kind of function in the same way, where they need these public API resources. And the demand over there is high. So it's been a battleground over the last couple of years of really testing hardware and seeing what can handle this kind of new application that isn't always the most optimized and sometimes just needs crazy hardware thrown at it. So it's like we're renting dedicated space, we're building custom servers, and we are starting to deploy and scale out just this API network that's going to be capable of growing alongside of EOS. Right now, it's already pretty insane, and it's only going to get crazier as time goes by. The blockchain gets bigger and we find more users.
Yeah, so that's great. I think so. You guys are doing a great service to the dApp community. So what do you see like in future? Do you see this when the ecosystem keeps expanding? Do you see this as becoming a service model where, from a business perspective for block producers, because you also need to look at sustainability of something to keep expanding. So it's an interesting aspect which you touched upon, and I'm just thinking, how will the block producers handle it? Like, for example, your node was, of course, one of the fastest, as you said, and we saw that in the EOS mechanics also when the first time it came out. So how does it impact? Like, can this be a differentiating factor for block producers, and can they use it as a business model?
So one important thing to note about block producers is that they're being paid by inflation, which is kind of like a tax, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So it's important to realize that these block producers should be providing some sort of value in return for their services. So it's not only block production that they should be responsible for. They should also be responsible for things like handling API requests. I think that is a fundamental thing that they should be providing to the community. And on that note, I don't think it should be like a paid model or something. I think it should be a free service, or perhaps we've been thinking about how do we actually like prevent abuse of the APIs. So maybe there will be some higher tier APIs that have like whitelists, so dApps can communicate with us and like we can provide and cater to their needs, but it'll still be free to them in that sense, as long as we're like a paid BP basically, because that's like the service that we provide. And it brings up an interesting question of, it's important for the people using our APIs to say that they're using our APIs, because that helps us too with our position.
No, understand. I think that is a good point you raised, that of course we expect from block producers more than just running the node. And that's how I think people are already discussing a lot. If you go to various Telegram groups, people talk about which block producer are adding value. But I think in general, it's also a question of it's not needed, it's not necessitated by the constitution for you to provide these faster APIs and so on, while it is more of something you do for the community. So this is where I think we need to, my personal view is that for-profit is always good. Like, for-profit always creates competition, and automatically the right people come up on the top. Right now, if we say that because we do have some questionable block producers in the top, maybe they're not even providing these services. And we don't know whether this is going to help the actual helping block producers. And so that's why I was thinking maybe it can be a business model. But I think you had a good point. So maybe, Aaron, you want to add
maybe
something?
Not business model, but maybe I think it actually should be a point of comparison between BPs. The ones that are providing really good APIs should be highlighted for that service that they're providing. And right now, it doesn't seem to be that way. There doesn't seem to be a comparison point for APIs or who's doing the best at it, but there should be.
No, I think that's a great point. So I think we do need to start discussing. So this is where I think, so as you know that we investing in the difference, we're also running a proxy, and we always keep thinking about the objective metrics. Like right now, we don't have metrics to really compare the block producers, and every metric which comes out, and I think you had a very good article recently about it can always be gamed if you start publishing those metrics. So it's a very, very important article, and it's still an experiment, right? The governance of EOS is still in early days. And how it will evolve. So I think it's a good point you're raising. We should all debate on how to use these metrics to really have a fair portrayal of who is really adding more value as a block producer. And but I think, as you said, it's also a responsibility of the dApps to highlight what APIs they are using. So I think we would definitely appeal to the dApps, and I hope that this kind of discussion comes forward beyond what we are already seeing in the public domain.
Definitely. And one point to add to the idea of dApps using these public nodes, I think that once a dApp hits a certain level of growth on their own, they ultimately are going to want to run their own nodes, because that's going to provide the lowest latency connection between whatever they're doing and what they need. So it's almost these API nodes, which I agree with the whole conversation that just happened. Like, all block producers should be running these blazingly fast API nodes to help app developers. They're kind of a launch pad for these apps. They're letting the two-man team somewhere build an app without having to set up their own infrastructure. And then, once they prove their idea and can grow into something bigger, then maybe there could even be a service model where block producers could potentially monetize helping set up this infrastructure for other people, which I think should also be, like, the knowledge should be freely available, but if they need actual hands-on. And that's kind of where I think we see this EOS Mechanics project going, is like, we want to take what we've learned from building this API infrastructure and share it, so that way all the block producers can run API nodes just like this. That's going to be the way we scale. It won't be us personally scaling. It'll be all of us scaling at the same time.
Now, that's a wonderful idea. I think, as you said, the knowledge has to be free, and that's what this democratized economy should look like. and we should look at services. Of course, there is no limit to how we can really expand. So one question, when you said that the dApps have to run their own nodes, do you think this is understood very well? Because again, I see that even a app like EOS Bet Dice, which was one of, like, where they're making a lot of money, they're actually generating a lot of revenues. I think for a very long time, I don't know if they're still running their node, but I think for a very long time, we saw that this was not very well understood.
I think that they're trying, but they don't necessarily have the best practices, or that's not their area of expertise. Hopefully, like I said, something like EOS Mechanics will be able to have a step-by-step, like, this is what you need, this is how you set it up, and then this is how you maintain it. And then apps like that will be able to run their own nodes. I can't specifically remember, but I remember talking with one of the Dice apps about their API infrastructure, and they had set it up and started using it, and they were like, well, yours is still faster. And it's like, well, like, if we could give you a guide right now on exactly what the best practices are, yours could be the same way. And so they ended up just going back to ours.
All right. No, I think that's, of course, you guys are expert. And as you said, you have a lot of experience running this kind of a DPoS systems in Steam. So maybe a short history, like how do you got involved in this DPoS? And maybe we'll talk about like your experience with that and the learnings and how it is helping you in EOS.
I'll start, unless Scott really wants. Okay. Before really diving deep and going full-time into crypto, was building a platform for crowdsourced reviews. And one of the really important things that the community in that subset of the internet craves is authenticity and like provability and the ability not to be censored. So during my research phase for that, I kind of stumbled into Steam, which solved a lot of those problems. So I just dove in headfirst with Steam, and that's kind of how I really started full-time on crypto. My history there was I've built Block Explorer's forum prototype, blogging prototype. Like I said earlier, I built one of the wallets that exists for Steam. I've built dashboards and just random tools. It's been a lot of prototyping just to learn how everything ticks and how people want to engage with the blockchain. So, and here we are today. I'm still involved in Steam. I'm working with Scott on EOS stuff, and there's a couple other various blockchain projects that I have my eyes on to potentially build some prototypes for. But it's about advancing all this technology, and it happens cross blockchain as well as within one.
Oh, that's great. Scott, do you want to add something?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a similar kind of history in terms of where we started with DPoS. It was in Steam. But for me, I was back then a PhD student. I'm a candidate, and I'm still not quite full-time crypto because I do want to finish that PhD. But I'm trying my best to balance both. And I've been working a lot. I worked a lot like for the past 2 years on Steam. And when I first got introduced to it, I wasn't expecting to become a blog producer. It just kind of was something that happened because I started providing services that the Steam community really liked. Like my academic background made me really harsh against plagiarism when I found it on Steam. So I ended up writing AI bots that would find and detect this junk and get rid of it. And people were like, wow, that's amazing. Please keep doing this. I'm like, all right, I'll become a blog producer. And then a couple of years later, there you are. Now I'm a top blog producer still, and I still provide these services for Steam. And that kind of got me integrated with the blockchain community a whole lot deeper because suddenly people were like talking with me that wouldn't have before because now they recognize my name. And so I got to meet lots of awesome people like Aaron. And that's how all this kind of stuff started.
That's great. I think you guys are doing a great job, and it shows that the experience you have with DPoS, the experience of running these things, it's really helping the EOS community. That's we are really happy that you got involved earlier, because a lot of people I think are still learning. When I talk to block producers, I don't think everybody has this kind of strengths. Every block producer has a different kind of a strength, and that's another strength of this DPoS system. Like there are a lot of people bringing in different aspects, and you guys focusing on performance, doing this infrastructure development, and of course the wallets and whatnot. It's a great contribution. So now let's switch gears and talk about future. So what do you see as where EOS is evolving? And we are already making very fast progress, as we said, and there are software is upgrading. We are talking about inter-blockchain communication. We are talking about sister chains. So what are your views on what is happening? And where do you see yourself? Like, do you see that this is something you will have to scale up a lot? Like, are you considering joining any sister chains like some of the other block producers do? So just share your thoughts on this direction.
All right, I'll unmute. Yeah, the first place we're kind of looking at some of this sister sidechain kind of stuff is within the wallet. We're working right now to try to make most of the code we've written agnostic enough that it can support things like Telos or any of the other chains that are also running the EOS.io software. We're definitely keeping our eyes out and starting to explore those and trying to figure out what makes them different and what makes them tick. But we definitely want the actual software we produce, whether it be a smart contract or desktop application or a website, to be able to be portable to these other chains. They might excel in one area, and the more kind of infrastructure that comes out of one will help the other. So it's going to be interesting as we move forward, because we're going to see a lot of cross-chain interoperability between applications, and people will be able to move between them, hopefully seamlessly, with whatever their app of choice or their platform of choice is.
To expand a bit on that, I remember a while ago, Aaron and I talked about different kinds of smart contracts and how when we have some kind of inter-blockchain communication, you could have a wallet that has like cold storage or like longer term storage on a slow EOS chain that's super cheap, but you could integrate that with the fast EOS chain. And since they communicate to each other, you don't have to worry about that. And suddenly it's even cheaper for the user. So this kind of competition of having sister chains, quote unquote, is just going to drive everyone to have a better user experience in the long run, and everything's going to be better. So some people think that it's going to take resources away from EOS, but I think it's the opposite. What you'll find is that you're going to grow your developer pool. You're going to grow the total amount of people working on EOS.io software. That's going to expand the whole ecosystem and not take away from it.
No, that's perfectly aligned with how I was actually explaining in one of the videos, and I was talking about it. Like all the sister chains, they are not taking anything away because it's more about adding value, right? Means they're doing something specific, and even if they bring in 100 more new developers into it, because people are working on their chain, they are working on the same software and they are building the expertise. That's one way of looking at it. But I think coming back to the Greymass, and you said that you are planning to support these new chains, for example, Telos, and maybe you can help claim tokens for people safely, because I think one of the concern people have is with the sister chains is some of them, like for example, Telos is using Genesis snapshot, and they may ask people to validate their keys. So I think, do you see this as a route for Greymass to enable those kind of claiming the tokens without exposing their keys?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something we will be exploring and trying to integrate and make easy as we make the entire application a lot easier. Your keys, once they're encrypted in a wallet, and then once you have a secure backup outside of your wallet, should just stay there. You shouldn't have to keep pulling your key out and putting it into a different program for a different blockchain, because every time it enters your clipboard, you're at risk. There's a threat that something's wrong with your computer and somebody could steal your funds, not only on the one blockchain, but on all of them.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think I agree with you that people need to really understand, even though now most of the people who are using these wallets, they are in crypto world for some time and they understand private keys. But I think people can get a little relaxed when they are already using a wallet and they say, oh, it's safe. What they don't realize is every time they expose their keys, and as you said it rightly, they have to really be careful. And also, like this is going to be like multiple chain thing, right? EOS, as I heard one time, Dan Larimer saying that, oh, we should have many more chains by now. EOS was designed to be like open source so that more and more people pick it up. So maybe you never know how many more chains will come up and if how it will evolve. And I keep hearing new projects moving to EOS and maybe starting their own chain, but I think it's still taking time. So what do you see beyond supporting the chains from Greymass perspective? What do you see are your next steps? Are you interfacing with these apps? Because as you told us that you are already getting a lot of support requests because they are using your APIs. So what do you see as your role in future beyond what you're already doing? Of course, you're doing a great job in running this node. But what do you see as your future role?
Something I would like for us to push forward is a bit more integration with the dApps, because right now there's some dApps that are just using our API and not talking with us at all about it. And I think there's a lot of room for performance improvements for what they're doing. And it would be really nice to have that conversation. It's like, here's what my load is for my dApp. How do I make this go faster? And that to me is super fascinating. I used to work at Intel and I love this kind of optimization stuff. And I think that's an awesome route to go down. It fits into the EOS mechanics big picture of how do we get performance out of EOS, period. And that is not just block producer performance, but that's API performance and this dApp performance too. So I've written a few smart contracts now, and I've been starting to think about how do we get performance out of this? How do I make sure that everything is fast and low latency? I think that is one cool direction that we can go down.
And I think to put a topic to that, one of the things that Scott has been involved with is the migration of the account history and APIs themselves directly from Node EOS into MongoDB. I had a handful of pull requests that have improved features because I was sitting in chat complaining about it. But the other aspect, while we're trying to make that easier for the migration of data to go into a database, once we have a really solid foundation of that is when I personally would like to start building our own APIs on top that help surface new information. Right now, all we're doing is we're taking the engine that Block 1 gives us and we're running it and we're tuning it and we're optimizing it. But we want to get to the point where we're actually writing our own API layer that lives on top of this database that's being built that will hopefully be even faster than the native APIs. And then anybody will be able to run that on top of their node as well. And it's just, it kind of sprawls out. And again, other chains will benefit from this, and just kind of an example of one of those projects that we'd love to get our hands dirty with.
That's great to hear. I think, again, it was great hearing all these thoughts, because I think you are one of the most technical and most advanced block producer, in the sense the way you understand these problems based on your history, and the performance is amazing. So thanks a lot. I think I would leave it with the last few thoughts on what you have to say to the viewers about EOS, about what you're seeing on the ground. So would you like to say something before we end the show?
Sure. Thank you very much for having us on, first of all. We think that the rest of this year is probably going to be really exciting. We have a lot of fun stuff that we're working on right now. Things like our rebranding, I'm super giddy about it right now. And then just generally kind of, trying to connect with more people out there. I'd say if you want, join our Telegram group. We can share a link, and feel free to just reach out to us and talk to us. We're happy to help people build their stuff more efficiently as well.
Yeah, I echo these ideas. Feel free to reach out to us, especially if you want help. Like if you're another block producer or a dApp developer, just come pop by our Telegram and just say hello. We're pretty active there. And we love to get our hands dirty with optimizations and stuff. So we'd be happy to help.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. I think this is one of the most important thing I think we have seen from any block producer is that the performance and the kind of features which people needed. And I think all of the viewers, I would really recommend you to connect with Greymass, especially if you're interested in developing apps, because I think you need block producers who are knowledgeable about performance, about how to really get the maximum out of the ecosystem. And I think EOS Mechanics is one example, and I hope to see great things in that direction. And we are really lucky to have you guys running one of the nodes, and I hope so. We always recommend you to vote, and as a proxy investing with the difference, we do vote for you, and we hope that you keep doing the great job you're doing already.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot for being on the show. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.